Which cults are you in? Most of the people I meet do not identify as being in a cult. Even people who are part of a group that is often considered a cult by others. Mostly they don't think they're in a cult. They think they're in a group that's doing some important exploration of something or other. And most people, from what I can tell, do not wish to be in a cult. But all this comes from considering a cult to be some, usually on the small side, some group of people with a charismatic leader maybe, and they all believe in some weird, way out of the mainstream thing. Cult is usually defined as something you will have to surrender your autonomy to. So let's imagine, let's say a group that let's say we all have an inner octopus, and our very humanity is at stake, because if we don't liberate our inner octopus, we will never reach our full human potential. Please donate money to the Grand Octopus so we can help all of our inner octopi or octopuses to emerge. Right? So that would sound like a cult to most people, or some other weird thing. Cults, basically, I think in the just without thinking about it much, they're going to take all your money. They're going to ask you to pledge your loyalty to some really crazy ideas. They're going to steal your free will, steal your autonomy, blah, 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 blah. So that's it. So yes, as per that definition, very few people in the population are in cults. And if this is the definition, then I do understand why most people will avoid small groups that deviate significantly from what is credible and acceptable in the mainstream. Or they'll try to create their own mainstream to be a part of. And if they think the mainstream is a cult, then they'll, do their other thing. But they're not going to think that what they're doing is a cult. So when I question, what is a cult really? Really, what is it? I find for me, it's very difficult to define if I leave out the small group part. How different really is a small group of people who believe in some weird new ideas? How different are they from a large group who's been believing some old weird ideas for a long time? Is it the size of the group or the newness of the group that really matters when it comes to cults? What I wanted to do was try and talk about cults in such a way that it would make a bit more sense, at least to me. Maybe it's the demand for loyalty that makes it into a cult. Well, then anybody who's a white supremacist belongs to a cult. They demand a lot of loyalty. Or a corporation that makes you sign a non-compete contract. How about a group of sports fans who attack someone for wearing a hat from a different team? Should demanding or giving loyalty to a group, should that define what a cult is? Maybe it's the demand to give up your autonomy, to surrender your free will, to give up your choices over and give them to a leader. Well, then that makes the U.S. Armed Forces a cult. See what I mean? People who sign up for the army, they're getting trained to kill other people, possibly to die for whatever cause they're sent to. And they're being sent to fight by their leader. Is that a cult? So as I start to think about cults, I thought it'd be good to come up with a very broad definition, a very inclusive definition, a definition where cults, in and of themselves, as cults, they're not bad. They're not wrong. They don't need to be avoided. I wanted a definition, in fact, that would make it impossible to avoid being in a cult. So that's why, for me, it made things so much clearer to just simply flip it all around and say, every group is a cult. If you are in a group that believes in something, then you're in a cult. Everyone is in multiple cults. No shame, no harm, no reason to oppose cults. In fact, because we're social animals, we need groups. We need to be in cults. We need to socialize with each other. And all our different groups, well, they need to believe in different things. So us social human animals, we need to be in cults. The more, the better. So that's how I came up with the title of this episode. Which cults are you in? My tentative proposal is just to try on this idea. We're all in cults. If you're part of a group that believes in something, then you're in a cult. Stamp collecting? Is stamp collecting fun for you? Well, some people in that cult will spend millions of dollars on just one stamp. I'm not in that cult. Even if I had millions of dollars, I wouldn't spend it on a stamp. How about, do you like to roll a heavy ball down a smooth wooden surface and try to hit as many pins as you can? Some people find that a lot of fun. I do it sometimes, but I'm not so much a part of that I would join a team and be part of a cult team that goes and bowls every week. That's a different kind of level of involvement with rolling a ball over a flat surface. How about enacting battles from the Civil War? How about driving a car around a track and trying to drive it faster than anyone else? If you believe that that's important, or you believe it's fun to watch, that's great. Awesome. Go for it. You see what I mean? We're all a little nutty. It's okay. It's not easy to be a human. We all need to belong somewhere. If you accept we all belong to groups that believe in this or that or another thing, then there's an important question that arises. You might want, out of the whole vast array of cults, you might want some criteria to be able to pick and choose. How do I evaluate a cult when every group is a cult? More specifically, how can I know which cults are safe and beneficial to join and which cults are dangerous, which are harmful? That's what I want to talk about today. Hello and welcome to the 10 Crutches podcast. My name is David. I'm glad you're here. Just to recap a little bit, I am asserting that we try on the idea that everyone is in multiple cults. And this grows directly from considering a cult as any group that believes in something. And everyone belongs to a group that believes in something, and everyone believes at least some made-up things. Everyone goes along with some set of invented beliefs. Which beliefs are not invented? Well, that's a trick question. All beliefs are invented. Everyone hangs out pretty much with other people who believe more or less the same as they do. Other people may think your beliefs are ridiculous or unnecessary or unlikely to be true, just like you can find some set of beliefs, I'm sure, that you don't go for. But still, pretty much any set of beliefs, even now that I mentioned all the thing about the inner octopus, there's probably might be somebody, hey, that's a great idea. So every idea probably to some extent is going to get some takers. The great thing, I think, about calling every group a cult is that you no longer have to worry about getting taken in or suckered or deceived by some cult. It's already a done deal. You already believe, for example, you believe probably that little green rectangles of paper have value beyond the paper itself, far out. Many people in the money cult believe, here's something they believe. The bigger the number in the corner of the green piece of paper, well, then they call this the value. The more value the green piece of paper has. Isn't that amazing? That's a very popular cult. There are quite a few people in that cult, myself included. Other people in the money cult, not me, but other people have formed a kind of subcult, and they chase after money as if it were the most important thing in the world to accumulate as much of it as possible. Not everyone is in that cult, but a lot of people are. If you could dig a little further into the money cult, you find out that there's these little rectangular plastic cards that have a magnetic stripe, a big long number, and these cards can represent a promise to pay the little green pieces of paper. If you go, for example, you go into a supermarket, you do your hunting and gathering with a shopping cart, you can be pretty certain that the cashier is a member of the money cult. And they also believe in the power and the reality of those special green pieces of paper or the little plastic cards. So nowadays, now you add in the technology on the phones, you can have a picture of a plastic card on your phone. So you can pay with the picture of the plastic card, which takes the place of the real plastic card, which takes the place of paying with the little green pieces of paper. So then you get the credit card bill in the mail and you look at it in your email account, and then you transfer money from your bank. So now a lot of people aren't even using those little green pieces of paper at all. So in the money cult, it's very important to be able to believe in symbols that are symbols of symbols. And by the way, do not, under any circumstances, try to walk out of a supermarket with food unless you follow the rituals of the money cult. The supermarket will give the cashier money to stand there at the register so they can scan barcodes, and a machine adds up all the different numbers on all the different items that you bring. And these are called prices, by the way. And so then it adds them up and it adds in a little tax so that the government can take a little bit of the money that you're spending. And so then you have this one big number, and then you have to, it's called paying. You have to pay. And so just be careful. If you don't abide by the rules of the money cult, they consider you to be stealing the food. If you walk out without doing that exchange of the green rectangles of paper or the plastic card, they'll put you in jail. Many members of that cult do not mess around with money. As a brief aside, this money cult has gotten so pervasive and has invaded so much of our thinking and turned it into essentially economic thinking and exchange thinking that people pay for things all the time, even your attention. A lot of people say, hey, pay attention. Pay like attention is something that you have and that you pay it, and then what are you going to get in exchange? It's just a weird thing. But I think this money cult kind of can warp your thinking about attention, for example. Anyway, that's a sidetrack. So instead of sidetracking, let's backtrack. Let's backtrack a moment. If you remember the old previous definition of a cult, that's the small, way out of the mainstream group that has the weird ideas, that's going to threaten your autonomy, force you to do things against your best interest, and then once they get you, it's impossible to leave. So that's the old definition. If you were to join one of those out of the mainstream groups of this old definition, you'd essentially be handing over your free will to some charismatic leader. And then you also hand over your common sense and your ability to judge for yourself. So the deep fear is that you're going to be taken advantage of. A cult is like a con that's going to demand your money and maybe demand you give your labor away without proper compensation, etc. Of course, the most dangerous loss of giving up your autonomy is finding yourself unable to leave. That's a big one. Cults are often identified as being cults because of not letting people freely leave whenever they wish. I believe this fear of the loss of autonomy and the way it gets pinned on the little group with the weird ideas, I believe the whole thing is a tactic. It's a mechanism. It's a mechanism society uses to create and maintain a mainstream. One way the society can define the mainstream is to use this label cult to describe anybody who's competing for meaning and purpose. And so with that old definition, that name-calling definition, any small group exploring alternatives to the mainstream, they can simply be accused of being a cult, and they get dismissed as a cult without any further consideration of the ideas themselves. So yeah, sure, there's always going to be some examples of small groups that are actually self-destructive, like a group that plans to kill itself altogether so they can leave this plane of existence and go to dimension 22Z and meet an intergalactic octopus. Just to be clear, I don't think it's a good idea to kill yourself to get to dimension 22Z. But by making only small fringe groups into cults and getting everyone to be afraid of cults. The mainstream can just point and then they say, "Here there be dragons." Like the places on the old maps that had not yet been explored. It was just plain scary to consider going there. The woods are dark and deep. Or maybe the area had been explored. Someone who's making a map wants to keep it secret. Our society functions with this mechanism of name calling to keep people from exploring territories that are upsetting to mainstream thought. And I assume this is because our society wants to rely on control and continuity. The problem is when we rely on control and continuity, we rely on people doing things over and over. Who's going to do something over and over when they don't really like doing it? Who's going to do something over and over when they think it's not a good idea? Well, they're going to have to either have no choices or they're going to have to believe in something that keeps them doing it. What if the mainstream itself is taking advantage of some of its citizens? One way to take advantage of people in a society is to have a money cult and really believe in the reality of these aforementioned pieces of green paper. People actually believe that money in and of itself has value. Once you have people in a money cult like that, then it's easy to get people to believe it's okay that there is no limit as to how much an individual can have. Lots of people in our United States money cult believe just that. Lots of people are convinced it's okay for billions of dollars to accumulate in private hands. They just shrug and say, well, yeah, sure, whatever. There is no way for any individual to accumulate billions of dollars unless they're part of a cult that approves of this. Personally, I would much rather live in a cult that believes, let's say, $100 million. Any individual who wants to accumulate more than $100 million. If $100 million isn't enough for you, well, the answer is tough luck. The answer is no. You can't. You can't. That's it. Accumulating money is over for you. Find a different game. You've reached the limit. Any money that comes in your way over $100 million, it's taxed at 100%. I want my money cult to say, if $100 million isn't enough for you and that makes you angry and want to have a tantrum, well, then let's go to a therapist. Use some of your $100 million to go to a therapist. Work on your greed and take that greed down a notch or two. And if people claim, well, then the billionaires won't do any more work if we take away their incentives. My money cult would say, let them go. I would say we want people in our society to accept living with less than $100 million. Honestly, I mean, even that's way too high, but you got to start somewhere. The idea is so shocking for most people in our money cult, they won't consider any limit at all. Anyway, that's far enough down that particular sidetrack, but it gives you a reason why I wanted to shift the definition of what a cult is. Cults are formed by believing in something. The content of the beliefs differs. The number of people who believe differs, but believing in something, that's what makes it a cult. That's what all the groups have in common. Believing in something is what makes you join cults. Atheists, by my definition, definitely in a cult. Atheists have beliefs about what's true and not true about the universe, and very strong beliefs about what other people call God, namely that there isn't one. That's fine. That's great. I'm happy for everyone who finds a cult that they like. Let's just call them what they are. We have to find cults we like because we all believe in things. We all want to find others who believe the same as us. Atheists divide up into different subcults depending on which variation of atheists they are. I would also say science is a cult. Scientists believe all kinds of things that can't be proven. You have to believe some things kind of axiomatically in order to be able to set about using the scientific method. And they just assume that these things are true, and then they carry on as if they are. That seems okay. Science is a cult. They've produced some good things, some more difficult things to live with, but I don't know. Cults, there's some support the right to abortion. Other cults oppose abortion. But I want to return to this important question. If everyone is in multiple cults, how can we determine if a cult is dangerous and or harmful? Well, probably the single most important thing you need to look out for is that autonomy question. Is it easy to leave? So here's a scenario. Let's imagine a giant corporation cult. We'll call it a cult because, they all believe in that their corporation exists. It's kind of a corporation is like a made up thing. Corpus is a body. So they're saying we have a body that doesn't belong to a human. It's just kind of a body. So no one person has to be responsible. It's like a little legal trick to make things happen, but that nobody has to be legally responsible. Imagine a giant corporation and it wants to make a lot of money. And let's say they want to grow bananas. So what if that cult enters the border of another cult? Let's call it Guatemala. And what if that company cult steals a lot of land and starts to grow bananas on stolen land? And what if this larger company cult worships money so deeply that they put a huge fence around the stolen land and they hire thugs? I mean, people who belong to the police cult. They keep out anyone who would otherwise just grow some vegetables and live quietly on the land. What if the people whose land was stolen are now forced to join the money cult because now they need money to pay for food rather than being able to grow it? So now these people have no choice but to work for the cult that stole their land. So how should we think about which cults are dangerous? How do we think about what does a group have to believe in for it to be a harmful group? Some cults believe in using violence to achieve their goals. These cults are completely willing to harm others to get their way. So remember, I'm defining any group, any political group, on the left or on the right, any group that believes in something, political goals for one, that group is a cult. Do they also believe violence is okay to achieve their believed in cult goals? The U.S. military, they're certainly okay with using violence. What are the beliefs in the cult of the U.S. Army? Talk about joining and not being able to leave. You have to follow orders whether or not they make sense. Does that sound like a good cult to be in? The U.S. Army has all the same qualities of any small, weird group that gets called a cult by the old definition. But a lot of people like it and support it and think it's a great thing. What do you make of it? Any corporation cult will tell you how important it is to make money and not want to question that at all, not one bit. Questioning beliefs about money in a corporation cult, that's a big no-no. Corporation cults all worship the magical people called stockholders. And it just doesn't matter what happens to the environment, to other people. Nothing can matter as much as the magical profit for the stockholders. So please tell me, what is a dangerous cult? Well, if somebody stops you at the border of the United States and checks your passport and says, no, you can't enter. We are a cult that does not want you to enter our land. We are a cult that has built borders, actual physical borders. So go away. Who wants to be in a cult that does not permit free movement? Well, quite a few people do, especially when it's the free movement of other people. It's very, very scary stuff. Other people from other cults moving freely about. In your town, lots of people are quite afraid of new people, strange people with different customs coming into their sphere. Okay, so you want your cult to keep you in and protect you and keep others out, I get it. But please take the time to recognize, for example, the effort that the United States makes at its border to keep some people out is directly related to the effort Guatemala must make to keep people in, growing the bananas, or the people that are simply abandoned to live in dire poverty because there isn't enough banana work to go around. I want my cult to let go of borders. See what happens. I would much rather be part of a cult that is up for working out all the problems that arise from free movement, rather than being a cult that tries to prevent all the problems and has to live with all that fear. I want everyone in the world to admit it. Some of the cults you are in, you have chosen. Other cults, like the money cult, they choose you. And then you have to find your place within the money cult. I want you to admit that your cults may change someday, but for now, please ask yourself, what do I believe in? And what groups do I belong to who believe in that same thing? In other words, please ask yourself, which cults am I in? To summarize, we are all in dangerous cults already. We are all in cults that cause great harm. Many humans really want to believe in things with certainty. But when you have certainty in beliefs, this leads your cult to act with certainty in an uncertain world. I hope we can all see how dangerous it is to belong to any cult that's 100% certain about what to do and what not to do. Let's join cults that emphasize humility. Let's join cults that help us expand our circles of love and caring. Let's join cults that make this world, which is the only world any of us have, let our cults make this world a good place to live in for everyone and a good place to join cults. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Please visit the home of the 10 Crutches podcast at 10crutches.link. That's 10crutches.link. The book that inspired the podcast, a book I wrote called 10 Crutches for Walking in the Present, is available for free download on the website. Also on the website, you can visit the archive to hear any published episode and see show notes for any and every show. Thanks so much for listening. And once again, thanks so much for listening. And I won't say it once again. See you next time.